Welcome to APTN National News on this Friday, August the 1st. I'm Dennis Ward. After 4 months of living in what she described as a house of hell in Winnipeg's North End, Samantha Zabrowski has finally found a home. But the First Nations mother of 6 says they're not the only family dealing with precarious housing in Manitoba, and she's speaking out in hopes of sparking change. APTN Sierra Bettens brings you her story.
After working tirelessly to get her life and her children back, all Samantha Zabrowski wanted was a home.
We're almost 18 months into our sobriety. We had to start all over again, from being reunificated with our kids at a transitioning center, starting all over from having nothing to building something to thinking we're having a home.
But for 4 months, she lived in what she describes as a house of hell. In early 2025, Zabrowski found a rental on Alfred Avenue in Winnipeg's North End through an online listing. But when she moved in on March 11th, she alleges it was nothing like the photos.
Leaving a transitioning center, fleeing for our lives, thinking we have a home to go to walk into the house of hell. No fridge, no heat, no water, no stove, nothing for me and my kids, no furnace. So we literally couldn't stay there. We had to leave.
Zabrowski and her family temporarily stayed at a hotel. She stored her items at the house on Alfred Avenue and did her best to secure what she alleges was an unsecure house. When they returned to retrieve their belongings on March 17th, she says they discovered the house was broken into.
Everything, the traditional dresses, my drums, my rattles, my kids' stuff, our clothing, our bikes, our electric bikes, our games, our couches, our furniture, right to the deep freezer and the food, right from everything that we had in the house, gone.
On March 17th, Zabrowski moved into another Ember Realty property on Aberdeen Avenue. But she says it wasn't much better than the previous rental, alleging
there's black mold, pigeon infestation. You can't go upstairs. You use the upstairs bathroom, it leaks through the ceilings. We're no longer able to bath the kids into the bathroom, into the area, the baby, due to the fact of the black mold smelling around the bathrooms.
Zabrowski received a notice of termination from Ember for non-payment of rent in April, but continued to live at the property on Aberdeen while on several housing waitlists. Shauna McKinnon, a professor of urban and inner city studies at the University of Winnipeg, says the lack of social and affordable housing in Manitoba leaves many low-income families with few options.
That is the kind of housing that we know is most accessible to folks who are living in low incomes, and especially when you're talking about families, with a bunch of kids. I mean, it's really virtually impossible to get housing that's affordable in the private market for those families.
She says Manitoba's Your Way Home strategy has focused on housing people living in encampments, but leaves out others experiencing housing insecurity.
Housing is really the foundation, right, in terms of health, education, employment, all of those things. Family unification of folks who are involved in child welfare. And so it really should be made the top priority to expand the supply.
After a hearing on July 8th, which the landlord did not show, the Residential Tenancies Branch ordered Ember Realty to pay Zabrowski $194.20 for the property on Aberdeen and $5,479.60 for the property on Alfred Avenue by August 5th.
We want our money back for the rent, the damage, the lost properties, the furnace bills that I've been paying for.
APTN reached out to Ember Realty for comment via telephone and email on multiple occasions, but they never responded. We also visited their offices on Selkirk Avenue, which appeared to be closed. A sign on the door directed tenants to pay their rent to the pawn shop down the street. I'm a reporter with APTN. I'm looking for Ember Realty.
Oh, they're next door.
The next door? Okay, are their offices closed
maybe
today?
Just a second. Car's still there.
Okay. Okay, so would she be at the building?
It's not the first door. I think it's the second door.
Oh, okay, the second door. Okay, great, thank you. Zabrowski recently moved out of the property on Aberdeen Avenue and into a new rental not managed by Ember Realty. But she's sharing her story knowing other Manitoba families are experiencing similar struggles. While APTN cannot independently verify them, online reviews of Ember Realty allege numerous issues, including black mold, pest issues, and a lack of communication from landlords. Sierra Bettens, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
On August 3rd, 1871, Treaty 1 was signed by the Anishinaabe, Swampy Cree, and the Crown at Lower Fort Garry in southern Manitoba. It became the first of 11 numbered treaties between the Crown and Indigenous peoples. Ahead of the 154th anniversary of the signing, Treaty 1 held a commemorative event with a ceremony, teachings, and a feast. Our Sierra Bettens joins us from Lower Fort Garry to tell us more.
This Sunday will mark the 154th anniversary of the signing of Treaty 1, right here at the Lower Fort Garry National Historic Site. This morning, we heard a speech from former Chief Dennis Whitebird about the significance of the signing of the treaty and the legacy that it carries today.
A treaty is, of course, a major part of our history. But as First Nations people, we have been using this territory, this land, for thousands of years. It was about sharing the land. And that's what treaty meant for First Nations people. Because we have a relationship to the land, that we have responsibilities of stewardship to look after the land.
Then, visitors were able to head over to a teaching, which was hosted by Carl Smith, a member of the Broken Head Ojibwe Nation. And after that, Parks Canada interpreter Marc-Andre Belcourt gave APTN a demonstration of Lower Fort Garry's Treaty Towels activity.
We're standing just meters away from where this drawing was created, and this is the only depiction that we have of the treaty negotiation process back in late July, early August of 1871.
This Sunday, August 3rd, Lower Fort Garry will be hosting its own Treaty 1 celebration. Admission is free, so be sure to come down. Sierra Bettens, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Thanks, Sierra. The Weston family, owners of the Loblaws grocery store chain, has reached an agreement in principle to purchase the 1670 Hudson Bay Royal Charter for $12.5 million, with plans to donate it to the Museum of History in Gatineau, Quebec. The charter is considered one of the foundational documents of Canada and would set what would become northwestern Canada's economic and territorial direction, but done at the expense of Indigenous peoples. The museum will work with Indigenous groups to guide how the charter will be shared. The agreement is still subject to court approval. The Hudson Bay Company received court protection from its creditors this past spring after the company publicly acknowledged it was in financial crisis. Time for a quick break, but first, here's a look at what our reporter Annette Francis is working on for next week.
Honey, I'm Annette Francis. I'm at Thunderbird Park in Wikwemikong First Nation, where preparations are underway for the annual Cultural Festival. The event kicks off this evening with an arts and music festival featuring Wikwemikong's own Crystal Shawanda and headliner William Prince. Over the weekend, the excitement continues with a competition powwow and the crowning of Miss Wikwemikong. I'll have more on this in the coming days.
Welcome back. A new poll has found that most Canadians think Canada is making progress on reconciliation. That was one of our topics on this week's Truth in Politics panel, where I was joined by Pasqua Strategy CEO Jennifer Lewitz and Winnipeg Free Press columnist Niigaan Sinclair. Niigaan, a new poll is out this week that says a majority of Canadians believe Canada is making progress on reconciliation. It's a bit of a strange poll that I will get to in a second, but your thoughts on the poll itself?
Yeah, strangeness is the kind of word of the day when it comes to this poll. I'll let you get to some of the weirdness around how the data was collected on this poll. Here's what I'll say that I'll take a hopeful approach. I think there's more people that are conversing, thinking about, and certainly reconciliation is a part of a national conversation in many sectors of the country, not all, but in many sectors of the country that simply just wasn't there a decade ago. The work of Justin Trudeau and his government, the commitments that were made have brought Indigenous issues into a national conversation, so much so that it was noticed when Indigenous issues was not part of the federal leaders' debate during the last election, either in the French or in the English. In the past, that was one of the 4 or 5 issues that was addressed at the federal leaders' debate. People were remarking that Indigenous issues were almost completely shut out of this last campaign. The fact that people noticed tells me that reconciliation is a part of a national conversation now. But the fact that it can be pushed away and pushed to the side tells me that we're not all that far ahead.
Jen, I said it was a strange poll, and maybe it's just me, but one of the questions was about whether Canadians trust other Canadians, and about 60% of non-Indigenous people say they trust Indigenous people. But in Saskatchewan, 38% of non-Indigenous people said they trust Indigenous peoples. So what do you make of that?
Oh, that's a hard one to answer, because Saskatchewan historically is a very rural, very conservative province. There's a lot of, historical and systemic issues here, especially as it comes to our justice system, addictions, poverty, homelessness. All of those things are predominantly affected in higher numbers with Indigenous people. So there is obviously that major gap between Indigenous people that trust their fellow Saskatchewan people. But at the same time, I think when we're talking about reconciliation in a broader view, and we're talking about understanding the history there, and how the federal government's decisions have impacted us, how other Canadians have picked up on some of those oppressive or maybe not so great views of us as Indigenous people, it's been hard to dismantle that. So reconciliation needs to be at the forefront in this country. But at the same time, I would be a hypocrite to sit here and say I don't understand why people don't trust us, when we have the FSIN in the media saying that there's $20 million unaccounted for, and then we have the Métis Nation of Saskatchewan with the president that's on a stage saying isolate them to his own elected officials. It's like, how do we go into rooms and say, no, just trust us, everything is completely fine? Obviously, there's some real trust issues within our own institutions, in our own governments, within our own people and communities. But at the same time, that shouldn't stop the work that we do with other Canadians, especially in Saskatchewan, when we're recognizing the history, where it's got us today, and how that is, an explanation for some of the things, addiction, root causes of crime, those sorts of things. But at the same time, I understand why people are like, I'm not going to give them blind trust, because they're publicly talking about why we shouldn't trust them in certain instances. So that's tough. What a hard question.
Niigaan, 10 years out after the TRC, is there a one main thing that you can point to? It feels like there's a lot of smaller things that have happened and they continue to happen in everyday life here, but a big thing that, an example of reconciliation in action?
I was going to add just one more thing. The fact there is a weird poll that asks weird questions might be a sign that we're hitting a kind of weird point in reconciliation. And here's what I mean by that is the time of making territorial acknowledgements that don't mean anything, where we say, we're going to share the land, then we don't actually share the land. I think Canadians are hitting a weird point in which they're saying, well, reconciliation in these kind of ornamental, grand gestures and even apologies, there's been so many apologies now that, like, what do they all mean? And what does that actually mean in terms of behavior changes or policy changes or actions? I could list off a whole bunch of, I think, grand steps forward. Bill C-15 is probably the biggest. It's a commitment to the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. But as we've seen, almost nothing has really happened since. Very little in terms of the government saying, well, we commit to Indigenous rights. But the same old cycles, as seen with Bill C-5, happens over and over again. Indigenous peoples are at the last part of that conversation involving energy resource use. They're just about signing off. It's not about consultation at all. And then it's a sort of vague, weird space that we're in where we're like, okay, well, what does it all mean now? Because if we're going to say we recognize Indigenous rights, but we just did everything that was antithetical to that, so what I mean is that we are in a weird time. We are in a very weird moment in which I think the government continues to act in unproductive, unethical, anti-Indigenous ways, has been the time of, the tone for the past 150 plus years. But then there's the Canadians are going, well, hey, you can't you said you're going to do something different. Hey, you got to act differently. And then, we demand more of our elected officials, as discussed in the kind of competency of the poll. There's an awareness now that we have to do something different than when just a bunch of ornamental, empty gestures. So I think that we're in a unprecedented moment, and in my more positive way, I think that might lead to more change, and I hope so.
Well, on that, Jen, in the dying days of the Trudeau government there and during the election campaign, there was a lot of talk that reconciliation is done for the Liberal government. Do you think that is the case? And do polls like this maybe give some hope that reconciliation action will continue here?
It doesn't necessarily feel like it's done, but I kind of get the vibe that it feels like it's been shelved. Where, we have this government that's like, hey, playtime is over. All of the things that we feel have not advanced this country are just being shoved aside. We're going full send into resource development. Like, we really saw the tone set forward by the Carney government, within his first few weeks in office, where this was going to go. And we saw the first action out of him on whether or not reconciliation was at the forefront. And that was Bill C-5, where he was like, no amendments, nothing, we're going. And then talking to Indigenous people later, and some of the feedback coming out of that meeting was that it was like, very quick, very rushed, very limited time for chiefs to actually have a conversation. So I wouldn't, I'm a hopeful optimist that I don't want to say that, the talk of reconciliation is over, because it can't be. The talk of reconciliation cannot be over. So I'm hoping that right now we're just on a learning curve with this federal government and with provincial governments across the country that are in their own national unity crisis with each other and with the feds. And that as Indigenous people, we're also in that weird learning curve too, where we have to come back to the table and also make sure that we're strengthening our governance systems right at home. It's going to be very difficult for us to advance, things like consultation and our own self-government when things are, a little bit messy in the waters within our own governance system. So
I don't know what criticisms you're talking about with the First Nations Summit there, Jennifer. The Prime Minister said himself it was a resounding success, so we'll take their word on that. Okay, well, it's great to see you both.
They should do a poll on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great to hear from you both. We'll see you soon.
Yeah, be glad. Thanks.
Thanks.
Now for a look at some of this week's web poll questions. Over on our website, we asked, has Indigenous Services Canada become too narrow in its interpretation of Jordan's Principle? The options are yes, no, or unsure. Our second question is, do you think Canada is truly making progress on reconciliation? Yes, no, or unsure are your choices there. And lastly, Prime Minister Mark Carney has now been in office for 3 months. Do you approve of the job he's doing so far? Yes, no, or unsure. You can cast your votes on our website, aptnnews.ca/poll. There's been a lot of talk about beaded medallions lately. We'll show you one that is out of this world after the break. At your current conditions, sunny and 21 in Fredericton, cloudy and 18 in Halifax, 12 with showers in Kuujjuaq, 9 in Nain. 20 under sunny skies at this hour in Montreal, cloudy and 19 in Val-d'Or, sunny and 20 in Sault Ste. Marie and Ottawa. Cloudy and 21 in Thunder Bay, 20 and cloudy in Sioux Lookout. 19 in Churchill, sun's out, and 26 in God's Lake. 19 at this hour in Winnipeg, smoky, and 21 in Dauphin. 21 in Regina, smoky, and 20 in Yorkton. 16 in Meadow Lake, sunny, and 22 in La Ronge. In northern Alberta, sunny and 30 in High Level, 25 under sunny skies in Fort Chipewyan. 33 in Edmonton, 27 in Medicine Hat and Lethbridge. Sunny and 20 in Vancouver, 27 and cloudy in Kamloops. Cloudy and 22 in Prince George, sun's out, and 22 in Smithers and Dease Lake. 23 under sunny skies in Old Crow, 21 with the sun out in Whitehorse. 23 in Yellowknife, sunny, and 24 in Norman Wells. 7 with showers in Sax Harbor, cloudy, and 22 in Inuvik. 14 in Chesterfield, 15 in Baker Lake. 3 in Resolute, 11 in Johaven. A delicious story now about an entrepreneur from British Columbia who's making her dreams come true, one charcuterie board at a time. APTN's Ryan Cunningham has that story.
To make a charcuterie rose, you get some salami. I've already pre-sliced this, so you just lay it flat here and keep building it around. Wiggle it around just to give it a little loose because you don't want it too tight. And then it looks like that.
Victoria Redhead is busy in her commercial kitchen preparing for another one of her delicious charcuterie boards. It's been just over 2 years since Redhead made her first charcuterie board for a family event.
We had a gathering and I made a board and I posted it on Facebook, and then I probably had like 20 messages from people asking me where I ordered it from. And it's like, I ordered it? Or I made it, and nobody believed me. And I was like, yeah. And then I made another one, and then people were influencing me to start doing it as a business.
She launched her own company called Owl Aboard Charcuterie 2 years ago. The owl is her way of paying homage to her late grandmother, and her edible art has transcended into these beautiful displays of exotic fruits, vegetable platters, the finest cheeses, meats, handcrafted chocolates, all served on biodegradable boards.
I do everything myself, from the slicing of the meat to doing deliveries to doing the orders, emails, everything myself. But I've done a lot of stuff for like Snotty Nose Res Kids, the Longhouse at UBC, Vancouver Fashion Week, Indigenous Fashion Week. So I've done quite a bit.
And over the years, she has taught herself new tricks, such as incorporating edible flowers, edible gold dust, and dehydrating her own fruit, as well as learning new techniques for her presentations from social media.
Eventually, I'd like to get a big storefront. That's my ultimate goal. Probably a couple years away right now, but that would be my goal. Maybe even having a couple of them. We'll see.
And so far, business is good, and her popularity is rising.
Just being recognized. I met some lady at Unlock. All the Indigenous people go to Unlock, and a lady who stopped me and was like, "Oh, I had your board." I'm like, "Oh," like I just get recognized more now, and it's a little, it's humbling, but it's also like, okay, I'm getting there.
Ryan Cunningham, APTN National News, Vancouver.
And now for something fun or perhaps a bit unsettling to end our newscast. A fashion artist from Southern California has beaded a medallion based on a creature from the 1979 science fiction horror movie Alien. The parasitic monster known as the face hugger is recreated here in antique glass seed beads on brain tanned hide by Native American artist Jamie Okama. In the movie, the facehugger implants an alien life form into unsuspecting hosts, which erupt and become aliens known as xenomorphs. She created it for Migizi Pensano, writer and producer of Reservation Dogs, for his new television series Alien Earth, coming out this month on Disney+. Pensano wore the medallion at the show's London premiere event, notably around his neck instead of his face. Smart idea. That's all the time we have for your first look at the day's news. I'm Dennis Ward. Marcy Miigwech, thanks for being with us. We'll see you at 6 p.m. Eastern.